Hello, welcome to Big Friendly Grub. I hope you are well. And if you watched last week's video on how to make homemade crumpets, which if you haven't watched, I do suggest you watch because homemade crumpets are awesome, then you may remember that I mentioned that I was going to be doing a load of running for charity this year. I'm doing 20 races this year in 2020, that's my thing, in order to raise money for Mind, the mental health charity, and hopefully raise a little bit of mental health awareness at the same time. And yesterday was my very first race. I ran a 15-kilometer race in Windsor and I finished it, and I actually got a personal best time for 10 kilometers, which I was very, very pleased of because I was just worried about finishing the race because I had a bit of a gammy hamstring this week. But I finished it and I actually got a medal, as you can see here. See? Like Muttley, I enjoy a good medal. And before the race, I said to myself, well, if you manage to do this, if you manage to get this first race in the bag, then you should treat yourself, and you should treat yourself to one of your favorite meals. And that meal is mac and cheese. But I figured, don't treat yourself to just like regular mac and cheese. Treat yourself to an amazing mac and cheese, a leveled up mac and cheese, a super duper mac and cheese. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you how to make a leveled up version of mac and cheese, which involves, well, it being a lobster mac and cheese. So yes, I'm going super indulgent. I'm going to be putting lobster into my mac and cheese along with 3 different cheeses. So it's going to be super luxuriant, well earned as well, might I say. A quick warning, this video is going to involve me showing you how to basically dismember and get the meat out of a lobster. And if that sounds a bit icky to you and you really don't like the sound of it, whether you're vegetarian or vegan and you don't want to see that sort of thing, or if it just makes you a bit squeamish, then I've got a lovely vegan carrot cake recipe on the channel, which is going to be a lot more pleasant to watch. No animals will be used in that video at all, just some horrible fate for some carrots. Don't worry, I'm not going to be showing you how to cook a live lobster in this video. It is already cooked frozen lobster, so at least you won't have to see that part if you do watch the video. So disclaimer out of the way, I'm going to get going with this because this is my reward for yesterday's running and I'm just really looking forward to this. So let's get going. Mac and cheese, oh yeah. Right, the very first thing we're going to need to do for our lobster mac and cheese is prepare our lobster, because we'll need the meat from this, but we're also going to be using the shells in our sauce. We're going to use this to infuse the milk with the flavour from the lobster, so none of this will go to waste. We're going to use it all because, you know, if you are a meat eater, you should try and use every part of the animal that you possibly can, because otherwise they've given their life for nothing. First thing we're going to do is take our lobster. Like I said, he is a pre-cooked frozen lobster, so like I said, I haven't killed this myself, I didn't cook it. You can pick these up in most supermarkets in the frozen section. What I will say quickly is, because I'm just doing this for myself, I'm just using 1 lobster. If you are making this for like 3 or 4 people, you might want to use 2 lobsters, but I'm not using 2 lobsters today because using 2 lobsters for myself is an opulence that I cannot afford. So 1 lobster was splashing out as it is, let alone 2. So first thing we're going to do is take off the claws. So those come off quite easily. The core of the meat is going to be in the lobster tail, and you can usually get these by yourself, but for some reason sometimes they end up more expensive just because it's the tail, and they do end up more expensive. So I think buying a whole lobster is a bit more cost efficient, a bit more affordable than buying just the tails. You might be able to see here, there's a natural line going down the lobster and one going across here. I'm going to bring it in so you can see that. So there's kind of like a natural line going down here and one going across here. And you're going to want to get a very sharp knife in here and just bring it down. It's unpleasant, it really is, but that allows you to get into the lobster. Then you turn it around and bring the knife all the way down the middle, like so. It's not pleasant, but you're going to want to get in there. And that's our lobster. That's the inside of our lobster. Now that we're inside there, there's a whole load of stuff that you can't eat that you're going to have to get rid of, and that's all sort of around this area here. So you can take all of this out. It's quite gross, but there's no pleasant way of doing this, I'm afraid. You can also see there's a black line down the middle of here, which you're going to want to try and get out as well, because that's kind of like its intestinal tract. Yep, it's gross, but you're going to want that as well, because that just won't taste very pleasant. And a bit of this side as well. So just get any of that out. And then you can just get the meat out of here. So So you see, there's your tail meat. And this other side as well. So there's your tails. Now I'm going to put these to one side and wash these out because, like I said, we're going to be using all of this in our sauce. Right, then we've got our lobster claws. So to get into these, we can break this part off and you can get into this part and just hopefully just pull some of this out. If not, just give it a quick whack. It's not going to be an awful lot in this part, but you don't want to waste any of this. So there we go, there's a little bit more meat. Now the claw is where we got some really nice meat. So when I want to get into this, and they are quite tough. So first of all, pull off the bottom bit of the claw. Then to get into this, what you're going to want to do is give it a whack here, just turn, and then give it a crack here, and a crack here as well. And hopefully, there we go, you can break into that and just get all the meat out like that. See, all intact and really, really nice. And that is your lobster meat all sorted. I'm going to put this to one side, clear up and give those shells a wash so they can be used in our sauce. Right, I've got my cleaned lobster shells here, all in a pan, and to this I'm going to be adding about a pint's worth of whole milk, or in this case I've gone for the gold top milk, which is the milk with the most cream on it, because I'm going super indulgent on this. And I'm going to pop this in here, let this come up to a simmer, and allow it to infuse with our lobster shells. So that's going to make our white sauce that we're going to make with this milk really, really rich and beautiful, and also make use of all that lobster. So like I said, none of it's going to waste. So this is another reason why to get whole lobster, so you can make use of this shell. You know it's not going to waste, and it just lifts this whole thing up to another level. It's already a level above with the lobster in anyway, but using all parts of this, making a super rich sauce is just going to lift it so much. Right, our milk has come up to a simmer, so I'm going to turn down the heat just to let this roll and boil away, not boil, but simmer away gently to let all that lobster infuse with the milk. I'm going to leave it for about 20 minutes. So while we're doing that, I'm going to get our actual mac for our mac and cheese on and going. Right, I've got a large pan of boiling water on the go here, and I'm just going to add into this 450 grams of normal macaroni. You don't need to go too diverse with your pasta. Just the standard elbow macaroni will do, and I'm going to bring that back up to a boil and just let that boil away for about 8 to 10 minutes, whatever it says on the pack basically. You might want to bring it down a little bit less because obviously it will continue cooking when this goes into the oven, just to brown off the top of our mac and cheese when that's done. Right, my macaroni's had about 8 minutes. I think that will be plenty, so I'm going to drain it off and I'll just leave that in the colander until our sauce is ready. Just keep an eye on it. Give it a poke every now and again, just make sure it doesn't all stick together, because it does have a tendency to do that if you leave it to cool down too much. Right, our milk has had about 20 minutes simmering away with our lobster in it, and it now smells incredible. And so you're going to need to strain this off, obviously, to get out all the lobstery bits and pieces. So get yourself a sieve, a jug, and gently pour this over. I've got some paper towel down just in case I do make a complete mess of it, which is highly likely. So just strain that through. And we can pop that to one side to use in our sauce, which we're going to be making next. Right, to make our creamy sauce for our mac and cheese, we are going to first need to create a roux, which is simply butter and flour. So 60 grams of butter in. Make sure you follow my instructions, otherwise you will rue the day. But not in the way that we're going to do here. Yay, puns. In with the butter, and while our butter is melting, I'm going to throw in 2 cloves of garlic. Garlic? I don't know what garlic is, but I am going to throw in 2 cloves of garlic, which will turn this into a lovely garlicky butter and just lift this sauce up even more. It's going to be amazeballs, and I don't know why I said amazeballs, because I never say that. Who says that now? Oh, I can already smell that garlic infusing with the butter, and oh, it smells so good. If you had smell-o-vision right now, oh, it would be the best. But you don't, so just imagine it. So our butter has melted, so I'm just going to add in the same amount of flour, that's 60 grams of plain flour, into the butter, and mix this in with the butter, making sure to get this flour well cooked, because otherwise you will have a horrible raw flour taste. So cook this out for a couple of minutes before we start adding in our milk. While I cook this out, actually, I'm just going to throw in a couple of dry bay leaves just to add even more flavour to this. This sauce is going to be flavour country. Right, that flour has had a couple of minutes cooking, but we're not done yet, because I'm going to put in a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, because that's going to give it a lovely kick. and also a teaspoon of mustard powder as well. And mix those in as well. Right, now we can start adding our milk a little bit at a time, otherwise if you add it all in at once you'll just get a lumpy sauce, which we don't want. So just add it all in, bit at a time, stirring it in as you go to get a nice smooth sauce. Don't worry if it starts clumping together like it is here, it will take a while for it to actually start turning into a smooth sauce. Patience is the key to a really good white sauce. Or a bechamel, as like proper trained chefs or those on the continent would call it. We uncouth people over here in Britain just tend to call it a white sauce. I've added in about half the milk, and you can see this is more looking like a paste rather than a clumpy mess, and it is getting smoother. Obviously we've still got more milk to add, but what I am going to add in the meantime is half a bottle of beer. Now this is going to lift this sauce up even further. I am using a non-alcoholic beer because I don't drink. You can use any sort of beer that you like, use your favourite beer. Try not to use a stout, the flavour would be too much, but like a lager or a pale ale will be very nice. I'm using Klaus Taylor because this was literally like the only non-alcoholic beer left in my local supermarket, because all the dry Januaryers who are doing dry January have taken all the best non-alcoholic beers.
Wasn't happy.
So I'm going to add in about half of this beer, a little bit at a time. This is just going to lift it up another notch. It's going to be just absolutely through the roof, this sauce. I can't wait. Now that the sauce is thinning out, I'm just going to take out these bay leaves because you don't really want those in there. That's half the beer added. You can see the sauce is becoming even smoother now and the colour is getting lighter. So I'll just finish adding in the rest of this milk, and this will then be ready to add our cheese into, because otherwise it's just a mac. Right, you can see that it's turned into a lovely smooth sauce, and we can now get our cheese into this. So I've already turned off the heat because the heat from this alone will help melt our cheese. And as I said at the beginning, this has got 3 different types of cheeses in it. I've got some lovely Gruyere, which is one of my favourite cheeses. I've got some normal mature cheddar, which just adds a beautiful flavour. And I've got some Pecorino Romano, which I actually prefer to Parmesan. It's actually made with used cheese, sheep's cheese. Sheep's cheese? Sheep's milk, I mean. It is a sheep's cheese, but it is made with sheep's milk. And I just prefer the flavour. I think it's slightly nuttier. But you could use Parmesan cheese instead if you want to. So I'm going to add all 3 of these. There's 75 grams of each there. And I'm just going to mix this in until it's all melted and smooth and combined. And before you ask, yes, the garlic is still in there. I've left it in just because I kind of like chunks of garlic in there. But you can fish it out if you want to. But to me, I think it kind of adds to it. But that is entirely up to you. So that cheese is all melted in there. You can see how lovely and thick that is now. That is a beautiful consistency. Then lastly for this, we're going to chop in some fresh chives, just because this complements everything really well. It goes really nicely with the lobster for some reason, some fresh chives. Adds a bit of freshness to it, because this is a lot of richness we've got going on here. Then of course we can't forget our lobster, so we're just going to get that in there and mix that through as well. Just get the odd occasional chunk of lobster, and it will also have all that flavour from the shells in it and that meat itself once that's mixed in. And then lastly we just need our mac for our mac and cheese, otherwise it's just a cheese sauce, which is not a bad thing, but it's probably not a good idea just to eat cheese sauce by itself. I'm sure your doctor would have something to say about that. Just combine all of that through. If that pasta has started to stick together, then it should be loosened up by the hot sauce. Oh, that looks spectacular already, and you could eat it like this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this as is, but what we're going to want to do is to get this into a dish, and we're going to just bake it in the oven for about 10 minutes with a lovely topping, which I will show you now. Get yourself a nice dish and just decant your mac and cheese into it. In fact, there might be a bit too much here for this dish, but I'll get in as much as I can. Cool, there's got to be enough for 2 here. Then just to finish this off, I'm going to add over some breadcrumbs, There's probably about, I don't know, 50 grams worth of breadcrumbs here that I'm going to scatter over the top. I've made these breadcrumbs from an old loaf of bread that I have. It was a bit stale, but otherwise still good to use for this kind of thing. Otherwise, if you don't have an old loaf of bread to hand, then you can just buy breadcrumbs from the shop. Then I'm just going to grate over some more of the Pecorino Romano just to give it a lovely brown and bubbly top. Then I'm just going to pop this in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes at 200 degrees just to allow that top to crisp and bubble up. Right, it's been about 12 minutes and I think that will be enough time to brown off this top. Oh yes, look at that, that looks absolutely gorgeous. That is just about the right amount of browning on top. I can smell, well, I can smell that. You can't smell that, I'm afraid, but you can see how beautiful and golden brown and bubbling that is. And it just looks so good. It smells so good. And I know it's going to taste so good. And I can't wait to get stuck into this. So I need to do a couple of shots for the gram. And then I'm going to get this in my face. And plus it gives it a couple of minutes to cool down, because if I put this in my face right now, I will burn my face. And I don't want to do that. You might want to see me do that, but I'm not going to do that. Right, I've mucked about for long enough. I'm going to get this on a plate. Here's my plate. I'm going to adjust that shot to get my plate in. And I am going to dig in. Oh, who cares where I dig in? I'm going to dig in right around here. There's no pretty way of doing this once you're in it, but who cares? Oh, look at that. Look, that looks absolutely fantastic. There's very few words for this other than, actually there's few words, but there's plenty of noises, and there's like, sorry. Oh dear, might have to put the adult content onto this video now. Sorry about that. Oh dear, it just looks so good. It just smells so good. All I'm doing now is making noises. I've not even tasted it yet. And I'm piling up my plate more and more. I'm sorry about this, but this was my reward for yesterday. So I think this has been earned. So I'm gonna get this to one side and I'm just gonna give it a try. Look at that. Look at that pile of gorgeousness. There we go. One glorious pile of lobster mac and cheese, lobster mac and three cheese to be precise. And I'm going to keep this outro really short because this is going to start to obviously cool down and then congeal, and it won't be as nice. It will still taste wonderful, but you want that gooiness of the mac and cheese, and we're going to get stuck into this right now. That is just so good. I mean, there's so many. Mac and cheese in and of itself is quite simple. It's macaroni, it's cheese, it's a white sauce, but it's got so many layers to it. It's got the kick from the cayenne, that's noticeable, but you've got like the 3 different kinds of cheeses to give it the gooiness, and then you've got that lobster flavour throughout because it's been infused with that lobster shell, and it just tastes so good. It tastes indulgent, and you can get your mac and cheese out of a packet, but come on. If you're going to make mac and cheese, do it right. It just tastes so good. And it is a treat, this kind of mac and cheese. I mean, you're not going to go out and buy lobster every day. Like I say, if you're making this for multiple people, then you might want 2 lobsters. I've only used it for 1 because I was intending to make this for myself, but that's made so much. I've actually got 2 dishes out of that. So it goes a long way. But it just tastes so good. But it is an indulgence. Again, the Gruyere cheese is not cheap either. But you're only going to make this like, I don't know, once every 6 months, if that, maybe once a year, because of the ingredients that are involved, but it just tastes so good. I'm not going to say too much more about it, but that is a definite reward for my run yesterday. And that is not the only run I've got to do this year. I've got another 20 to do this year, because I've actually booked 21 because I'm a complete mug like that. If you are interested in about what I'm doing, then I'll put a link to the Just Giving page down below so you can go off and see what I'm doing. But I've got another run in a couple of weeks, and I'll have to think of a different treat for that one because I can't keep making this all the time. It'll bankrupt me. But it's just so good. So I'm going to head off. I'm going to go enjoy this. If you enjoyed the video, if you thought it was useful, give it a like. If you enjoy what I'm doing, give the channel a subscribe, all that usual stuff. You know what to do by now. And I will see you on the next Big Friendly Grub. Bye. Hello.
were at the beach. Everybody had matching towels. Somebody went under a dock, and there they saw a rock. But it wasn't a rock. It was a rock lobster! Rock lobster!